Okay, I think everybody here realizes how important communication is for organizing activities. And this is evident in our society, and that's why authoritarian regimes silence their critics to control their behavior. And in biology, communication between cells is also vitally important for health. And in fact, some of the most exciting drugs on the market right now are aimed at manipulating dysfunctional signaling pathways, and this can be applied to autoimmune diseases, cancer therapies, and even metabolic diseases. But we haven't taken this strategy yet to deal with infectious diseases. And I think many of you would be surprised that bacteria communicate with one another, and they use small chemicals to do this. And this is a common phenomenon in microorganisms, and it's called quorum sensing. And my lab studies bacteria called streptococci, and some streps cause bad diseases like strep throat, cause scarlet fever, blood infections, skin and soft tissue infections, and so forth. And we asked the question, how important are these communication pathways for streptococci to interact with the host organism? And so to address this question, we made two types of strains. One strain is very active at communicating, and another strain that we used is a mutant that is unable to communicate among its members in the community. And when we applied these two different types of bacteria onto innate immune cells, we got a very surprising outcome that were very different from one another. So in the bottom panel here, the mutants that were not able to communicate with each other were perceived by the macrophage and activated the macrophage to activate inflammation and recruit other types of immune cells. This is a healthy response of an immune system. But the bacteria that were able to communicate and were actively communicating, when applied onto these macrophages, block the ability of the macrophage to respond. And in fact, the macrophage is virtually silent. What's even more exciting is that when we put these actively communicating bacteria onto the skin of mice, what resulted was a really bad skin infection in the animal. But the mutants that could not communicate did not cause an infection. And in fact, the slight inflammation that was seen was resolved and the skin was healing very rapidly. So what this tells us is that these communication pathways are really important for these bacteria to cause an infection. So how do we make use of this information? What we'd like to do in my lab is block the ability of bacteria to talk to each other. And what we're hoping is that by doing that, we can restore the activity of our immune system. Okay, so this is a picture of the bacterial receptor that is required for the bacteria to communicate with one another. And we screened libraries of drugs, and we found some that inhibited this receptor. And this is a graph that shows, basically quantifies the results I just told you a second ago about the activity of the macrophage. So quorum sensing off bacteria result in this very robust, strong inflammatory response. But the quorum sensing on bacteria block this response. You got low responses. But when we applied the inhibitor that we have found onto the bacteria, it restored the ability of the innate immune system to respond to these bacteria. So we've rescued the immune system. And so now we need to move this into animal models, and hopefully this can be applied for new therapeutics to treat bacterial infections, which is really important right now, especially as antibiotic resistance is growing worldwide. Thank you.